I've got 5 questions for this Alabama team as it looks to begin its defense of its college football playoff national championship. So many different areas to hit on. But question number 5, and where we'll get things started, is with this revamped coaching staff. Really unlike anything we've seen under Nick Saban. 6 new coaches on the practice fields later this afternoon at Alabama. There's 3 on defense. When you talk about Carl Scott coaching the secondary, Pete Golding going to coach the inside linebackers, and Craig Kuligowski coming in from Miami to coach that defensive line. But as we sort of talked about a little bit yesterday, the most interesting aspects of the staff on really both sides of the ball is how it's going to operate and function at the executive level, with Mike Locksley stepping in as offensive coordinator for Brian Dable, a one and done now with the Buffalo Bills, and former Alabama quarterback A.J. McCarron up there in northern New York State. But how that will work with Locksley as a standalone offensive coordinator, Dan Enos, very highly thought of as a quarterback's coach coming in, and also a guy who has done good work as a coordinator in his own right, most recently at the University of Arkansas. So how that meshes along with the input that you know is going to be coming from Nick Saban, regardless of what area it is of the football team, how that sort of meshes and works will be interesting to watch play out. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you're going to have Tosh LaPoy promoted to that defensive coordinator post, still going to coach outside linebackers, but he fills in for, of course, Jeremy Pruitt after 2 seasons as coordinator, moves on to the University of Tennessee as head coach. But Tosh and the dynamic with him and Golding as the inside linebackers coach, who has coordinator experience himself. Carl Scott, as we mentioned, coming in to coach the secondary, he was set to be a coordinator at Louisiana Lafayette before making the trip into Tuscaloosa. So how these things work, and I understand that with Nick Saban's presence, there isn't as much of a concern, and really shouldn't be, given what he's accomplished as a head coach in making all of this work. And by the way, there were some interesting comments from Saban in that aforementioned piece with Chris Lowe that's up today on ESPN.com in relation to going younger with this staff and making the changes that he did, and pointing out, Nick Saban did in that article, that even back at LSU, he had a very young staff, which he did. I mean, you think about Will Muschamp now, and going back 15, 16, 17 years to LSU, that's a young guy in a prominent role there on that LSU staff. So this isn't really anything new in terms of freshening up, I guess you could say, this coaching staff from an age standpoint and an energy standpoint, but in mass like it is, and going to a 10th on the field assistant, which is allowed beginning with this upcoming season, created another opening on the staff. So how that plays out will be very interesting. You've got some existing staff members coming back. Joe Panunzio going from tight ends and special teams to coaching those running backs. And we understand Alabama's been blessed with a wealth of talent at the running back position. There's no doubt about it. You can go Mark Ingram, you can go TJ Yeldon, you can go Eddie Lacy, Trent Richardson, Derrick Henry, obviously. Here most recently, just looking at Damian Harris, Bo Scarborough, Najee Harris, a guy this spring that'll be interesting to watch, along with Josh Jacobs and Brian Robinson. So there has been incredible talent at the running back position under Nick Saban. But don't let that diminish from how important Burton Burns' work has been at that spot and with the offense over the last 11 seasons. So while Panunzio steps into a very good situation in terms of the players he's going to coach, Burton Burns, day in and day out, the best you're going to find as a running backs coach in all of college football. So a little bit of heat on Joe Pa to show that he can maintain that level of excellence that Burton Burns served over for so long under Nick Saban at Alabama. And by the way, I still think we're going to see Burton on the practice field. Not coaching, but I think we'll see Burton out there and observing, okay? Similar to what we've seen with Joe Pendry, the former offensive line coach in the past, Bobby Williams the last couple of years ago in an off-the-field role, and he has now moved on back onto the field at the University of Oregon under Mario Cristobal. I don't think, put it this way, I don't think Burton Burns has been shoved into cold storage, okay, somewhere up there in the Malmore Athletic Facility. I think we'll still catch Burton out there a pretty good bit. Question number 4 for this Alabama team as it heads into spring practice. Will Skylar DeLong prove to be J.K. Scott 2.0? You talk about a big right punting shoe to step into. How about Skylar DeLong? J.K. Scott, the last 4 years, nothing short of amazing. You can pretty much count on, 46 yards a punt on average from J.K. Scott over the last 4 years. So when you look at DeLong stepping into this role, trying to fill that spot as a true freshman, it's not just this guy that's going to have a hard time living up to what J.K. Scott did the last 4 years. You could pick any punter in college football for the upcoming season and put him next to J.K. Scott. Forget about a true freshman. You can put a rising senior up against J.K. Scott, and they're going to pale in comparison. So, whereas you hope, if you're an Alabama fan, that Skylar DeLong will be able to deliver on occasion some of those majestic bombs that we saw from J.K. Scott, expecting the kind of consistency in which Scott produced those punts since 2014, that just doesn't seem all that realistic to me. I'm going to give Skylar DeLong a spring and into fall camp before you start making some determinations about potential drop-off. Maybe there won't be any, but I'm going to lean toward there being a bit of a drop-off from J.K. Scott to Skylar DeLong, because I think, again, when you compare J.K. Scott to any punter in college football, you're talking drop-off. And we could also include Joseph Bulovas in this, too, for spring practice. With Andy Papanastis out of eligibility, J.K. Scott, who contributed to place kicking as well here in the last year especially. The redshirt freshman, Joseph Bulovas, a great opportunity for him here in a window in which he really needs to take advantage of this opportunity because, as we know, Austin Jones, the grad transfer coming in from Temple University this summer, this is a 15-practice sort of private audition for Joseph Bulovas. He needs to make good on it because Austin Jones comes in with a pretty strong resume when you talk about experience and also ability. So that's question number 4. Question number 3, then we'll head to a break, come back and catch 2 more. What will the first-team offensive line look like come A-Day? Great question because, again, Ross Pierce-Baker expected to step in perhaps at center for Bradley Bozeman. How does that impact the rest of the offensive line? Jonah Williams, do you keep him at left tackle? You've got a couple of young tackles, and Alex Leatherwood, as you saw in the championship game against Georgia, fared pretty well, cold off the bench like he was. Jedrick Wills, I think, is going to be extremely hard to keep off the field, more so than any other time than in Saban's tenure at Alabama. Tackle depth is really at an elite level. So the competition for spots, even inside at left guard, if Pierce Baker moves over, not going to be limited to probably just interior guys like Josh Casher, Dallas Warmack, and those type of veteran reserves. I think there's the potential for maybe a tackle or two to plug in at an interior spot if needed as well. So there's 3 of our 5. Now we're to question number 2. And that one pertains to the Alabama secondary. Who has next in the Crimson Tide secondary? And with 3 and outs, you sort of expect it on an annual basis that you're going to replace a guy or 2, maybe 3. But your top 6 defensive backs, well, that's where Alabama is at right now. A building block that you feel good about going into today's start of spring practice, Deontay Thompson. The way in which he played in the college football playoff, you feel okay about a safety spot with him. But everywhere else, pretty wide open. Now, the guys that I'll have my eyes on perhaps the most as we get started with spring practice, Trayvon Diggs, going into his junior year, competed at that one corner spot a year ago before giving way to Levi Wallace. Savion Smith coming in from the junior college ranks. Jared Maiden, another third-year player at corner. I think those three guys at corner. Also Shaheem Carter. I think Shaheem Carter, although he has been almost exclusively an option at the star position, could still factor in at corner as well. As far as other safeties to go along with Deontay Thompson, Daniel Wright, who can work at safety, can also work at money in the dime package, as we've seen in the past, and Xavier McKinney at safety as well. Those are some of the primary options I would suggest keeping an eye on here in the next couple of weeks in the Alabama secondary, which is in need of reloading. And the top question going into this run of spring football practices, how will Nick Saban manage this quarterback situation? Talked about this pretty well in good measure yesterday with Tua Tagovailoa, with Jalen Hurts. Again, this isn't the most pressing area of concern or need for this team. And we can talk about the secondary. We can talk about Deron Payne, Deshaun Hand moving on from that defensive line even. But this is the storyline everyone's going to latch on to. We know that. All eyes are going to be on Hurts and Tagovailoa as early as today's practice. And again, from Saban's perspective, between the improvement that you get from strong competition, healthy competition like they have right now at the quarterback position, and also having to be mindful of the potential for attrition. If we're being totally honest about the situation, you've got to let this situation continue to play out. And there's legitimate competition here between Hurts and Tagovailoa. So it isn't just something that you're trying to manufacture artificially. It's organic. And so at least for the foreseeable future, no expectation for Nick Saban just to come out and say, yeah, it's still Jalen, or yeah, we've decided we're going with Tua. This thing is going to take a while, I think, to have any type of validity or strength in terms of a decision being made at that spot.